question to the Minister of Natural Resources. Minister, you know that there is increasingly more frustration every day in Northern Ontario when it comes to the MNR shutting down access to pieces of Northern Ontario where people have been traveling and going for years. I have a particular example, and we're soliciting your help to see at least you can fix one of these. There is what they call Fushimi Lake. Fushimi Lake is just outside of Hearst. For 3 generations, local people in Hearst have been accessing that lake through Brûlé Creek. Now, all of a sudden, last year, MNR decides that they're going to post a sign and nobody's allowed to do any motorized access onto Fushimi Lake from that particular creek. Are you prepared to do something to fix that, or are we going to have to continue seeing more and more of Northern Ontario shut down to Northerners?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to talk about access to our parks, and certainly I've spoken with many people and organizations who represent people who love our parks and want to fish and hunt in those. Certainly we work very closely with our partners to make sure that we have arrangements in those parks that works for the local communities. We do a lot of consultation through you, Mr. Speaker. We make sure that particularly for those remote parks in the north, that we are only closing down vehicular access to those parks. That's the only thing we do. The rest of the time you can come in and canoe and portage. You can fly into those parks. The access is something we want to make sure continues because these are our greatest asset in Ontario. We feel very strongly that these are resources that everybody wants to take part in, and we continue to work with local communities. I'm happy to have those discussions with any local community. Thank you, Speaker.
Minister, the local mayor and council, along with the people affected, have been meeting with MNR on numbers of occasions. I have as well. We brought this issue to you, but it's yet one more example about how people in Northern Ontario who have been accessing an area for either fishing or snowmobiling or picking blueberries aren't able to access particular parts of the Northern Ontario because you're posting signs saying, don't enter here, you can't get in, off limits to you. 3 generations people have been going on to Fushimi Lake. They know well where that place is, and what we're asking you to do, will you do what you have the right to do as minister and to allow access onto Fushimi Lake from Brûlé Creek, or are you going to continue shutting down more of Northern Ontario?
Mr. Speaker, as I stated earlier, I understand that there are some Ontarians that are concerned about their ability to access Crown land. I want to assure Ontario residents that they continue to enjoy unrestricted access to the vast majority of Crown land for recreational purposes. They can still use these lands, as I said earlier, to hike, to canoe, to portage, or to fly in to access those areas. Fishing and hunting are still permitted. Restricted access is primarily aimed, as I said earlier, on motorized vehicles. It's also used to protect sensitive fish and wildlife populations from overexploitation. We have sensitive trout lakes that we want to protect, and for public safety reasons, if there's a culvert breakdown or a washout. We're working towards balancing the public needs to access of our recreational opportunities